thank you for everyone who's put their video on. I personally am a very social person, so I love I see some people from Alien Faculty Incubator, so yay! That's fantastic. So yes, thank you for doing that. Happy to engage. I'll just get my colleagues there, Lena and Teresa, just to keep an eye on the chat. So no conflicts of interest to declare whatsoever. No one pays me to do a darn thing. So that's where I am. This is actually a slide I had before, and I was going to alter it, but I thought about it. I mean, we're all starters in some ways, right? We're all more expert than we were the day before, and we're all starters relevant to someone else. For example, relative to Teresa, that's always going to be the case. So I just left that there. And it also made me think, how do we start again? How do we think about the fundamentals of tweeting? So much like Lena, I joined Twitter actually because a colleague of mine in my Master's of Clinical Science program, in our learning and teaching and learning course, there was something called a micro teach. So you have 15 minutes to use a frame to teach on any subject. So I was very unpopular that day because I have a minor in English literature, and I taught about how to interpret this William Blake poem. So that did not go over well, although they did very well. My much cooler colleague, Dan Pepe, actually taught us about how to get onto Twitter. And out of alliance with him, I decided to get on. And I've been on for about 2.5 years. And I rarely use the word transformative, but for me, from a career lens, it actually really has been. If you look at some of the examples of what it can do that Lena spoke to, I have been approached for healthcare roles in leadership for sure because of my presence on Twitter, and I've actually been found that way. I've used it to collaborate, so similar to Lena's story, the actual connection between she and I actually happened through Teresa on a DM on Twitter, and that's how we connected for this talk. And as the co-chair of Women in Medicine, or actually it's called OMA Women, what used to be the Outreach to Women Physicians Committee of the Ontario Medical Association, when I started co-chairing that, we actually had no social media. It's about 1.5 years ago. And so through use of hashtags like #women, I really found this community of interest. And we were able to very, very quickly get some followership. And more importantly, we were able at that point as a committee to become, I think, more well-known and to be able to partner with like-minded people and to actually push out our message to people who necessarily probably weren't part of our audience, did not think that they were fans of #women in medicine. And I think it's that allyship, that sort of expansion that was really important to us. So a bit about me. So I'm the pre-clerkship coordinator at McMaster University. I am also the social media lead with the program for faculty development run by Teresa, and that's our handle at MacPFD. And my real job is that I'm a family doctor in Cambridge, North Dumfries, and I do some leadership work with the LIN, and I'm right now in the pandemic WW task force, which has been incredibly busy, and I have apparently a suboptimal Twitter handle, which I own and admit, and you can all work on that with me. So disclosures, none. So the key point for me is what makes a good tweet, and I think we all should step back and think about our tweet construction. So this is just a tweet from the weekend. And for those of you who are a little newer to Twitter, I just thought it'd be worthwhile kind of talking about the profile pic. Obviously for professional Twitter, ought to be a professional picture. I mean, ideally it should resemble us a little bit. Obviously most of us want to put a bit of a glam pic, and I completely understand that. But, we probably need to keep it a little real. And as far as the Twitter handle goes, good to have your credentials on there. So I have 8. I feel confident that I am the 8th Sharon Ball in the world, Lena, but I probably could have an MD there. And so, again, I think the power of the platform is in its brevity, right? It's the brevity of it where you have to just cut through the BS, get to the point. And actually, that's what makes it fun to engage in. It's not like when you write an email where you're thinking about the salutation and the grammar. It really is something you can pick up your phone and just shoot something off. And it's that conversational, relational piece that actually makes it incredibly powerful. So in the body of a tweet, you can have your hashtags and your tags and your graphics. And of course, you also get statistics. So it's not uncommon for us to look at a tweet and sort of see how many likes and retweets it had, particularly if it's to us a bit controversial. And then of course, you can share it on other platforms. So this is a slide that has made its way through the Twitterverse for sure. And it gets to the point about engagement. If you want to increase your followership, if you want to increase your engagement, then you too must engage, right? So at the beginning, when we're dealing with any new platform, we tend to lurk, tend to kind of check it out a little bit, which is fine, but that doesn't really do much for your profile. And it really doesn't get you followers. It doesn't really get you actually actively engaged with the medium. So when you feel more comfortable, you usually will go on to liking a tweet. But eventually, we want to go further. We want to engage more. You get out of this what you put into it. So retweet is just a more active type of engagement. And really, the money is at the top. So a reply, obviously, when you're replying to another tweet and forcing yourself to actually type something out. And a tweet is when you're putting yourself out there. And so the most important thing, as Lena spoke to, is finding your voice. And in professional Twitter, thinking about what you want to say. When people are following you, your followers want to kind of know what they're going to get. They kind of want to know what your interests are. And that's one of the reasons they're following you. So when you actually do your own tweet, that's the most powerful piece. And that's the most active engagement, the most bang for your buck. So for my colleagues here from ALM Faculty Incubator, this is not scientific in any way. It's not vetted. Literally just pulled this off and sourced it down there. I don't care about the percentages. The point is the basic take homes is that, of course, if something is visually attractive, and this is true for our presentations, for any social media, it tends to engage more people. So if you have photos or videos that will boost your engagement, usually the metric there is the retweet. If you use quotations, it'll do the same. And then, of course, for the clinicians and educators, adding a number, adding a statistic tends to, in our crowd, bump up our retweets. And of course, hashtags does the same. So I absolutely love this tweet. I just think it's epic, right? So on the left, you have a nice professional picture. You have a good Twitter handle with MD in it. This person uses the brevity of the platform, six words, an unusual chest x-ray, what's happening here, and he lets the picture do the talking. So you have a nice graphic, a chest x-ray he wants you to unpack. And then, of course, he has effective use of hashtags. So, metadata tags, which again make your tweet more searchable. And you can see actually, sometimes when I look at hashtags, it kind of also gives you the information of who is he putting this out to. And in this case, kind of gives you a hint about what might be happening. So again, this is to hashtag MedEd, to cardio Twitter, to FOAMed, to cardio ed. And so he's effectively used that to make his tweet more searchable. And then of course, at the bottom, he's tagged people. And it's interesting, the game of tagging, because it's kind of like if you call someone, it wasn't that important, and it reaches the third ring, fourth ring, you hang up. Do they have an obligation to call you back? Yeah, but you can sort of, if you're interested in what the person has to say, you might say, oh, I missed a call. And if you aren't, you're like, thank God, there's no message left, right? But tagging is different. Tagging is like the person's left a message saying, call me back. So it really, again, forces a certain level of engagement. And when I'm tagged, I really do feel an obligation to at least, like it at the very least, but usually retweet it. So again, it's an effective tool that people use very, very well. And if we think about the idea really with social media of amplifying our message and trying to increase our followership and really trying to harness the power of this medium, this is the proliferative piece that tagging can provide. So here's a slide from last fall when I did my first social media presentation, and I had a little bit of a panic because my colleague Catherine Tong just told me I was doing a talk at the faculty retreat a couple of days later. I didn't have a prepared slide deck. I put it out into the Twitterverse. I tagged a few people, including Teresa Chan, Nadia Lam, the past president of the OMA, and Dan Pepe, the colleague of mine that got me on Twitter. Along with a few others. And I said, I've got this talk, can you give me some help? And sincerely, within about 55 minutes, I had about 3 or 4 slide decks, a whole bunch of research from Teresa Chan, lots and lots of papers, and also some encouragement from Dan Pepe. And so it just goes to show that, we no longer are bound, as we know, by geographic barriers, but we're no longer even bound by knowing someone particularly well in person. Just through Twitter, we have relationships with many, many more people than we realize. And again, tagging makes a difference. So I wanted to really deconstruct this tweet because I think it's a phenomenal example. So I like the content, but more important than that, I just want you to look at it from a student of Twitter. So we have a nice picture on the left. That's this Lash Nolan's profile pic, and a pretty easy to remember handle for someone who's looking her up, first and last name. And then we have just a nicely constructed tweet. So she starts with exciting news. That's brilliant, right? Because that's exactly what you want to do, because you want to read. So she says, exciting news to share with my hashtag Med Twitter family today. So we have an idea who it's directed to. And she says, this year, I will be serving as the first female African-American student council president in the history of Harvard Medical School. Notice her capitalization on the things that are important to her in that piece. She continues the excitement with an exclamation mark. And then she goes on and says, what is she going to do with her exciting news? I am looking forward to using my platform to advocate for justice and inspire change. So a few points here. So first of all, her exciting news, does the picture seem congruent with her excitement? Yes. You wouldn't believe how many times there's a picture that has absolutely no connection to the tone of the tweet. So she looks excited. She looks like she's looking forward. And she's got some austere building, presumably Harvard, behind her. So again, a very congruent sort of tweet. You can see just at a snapshot within a short amount of her posting her tweet, I think like a few hours, she had close to 4,000 likes, and I'm sure many more. So what I think is powerful about this tweet is it's visually striking. It uses a message that then is enhanced by the graphic. And so the congruence of that is really important. And the photo she used was perfect. It uses a hashtag that's, again, sets the tone and also makes it clear she is announcing herself to the Med Twitter family. She uses relational words. And so look at the words she uses. So share, family, serving, looking, advocate, inspire. So these are not flat announcements like, hey, I'm now the female, I'm now the president of Harvard. That's a different kind of tweet. She's announcing herself. And you can see there's a feeling to it of a new era. And in some ways, that's the cool part that Lena was talking about, this new platform. And the fact also that Twitter, to a lot of us, means equality. It's a place where we're all equal. And so me is really the exactly correct place for Lash to actually make her announcement. Now, could this be maximized in some ways? I suppose it could have. She could have tagged maybe the medical school, so at Harvard Med, etc. But really a really good illustration of what makes an excellent tweet. So on that piece, now we're going to do our exercise. So I'm going to ask you all to compose a tweet. And so many of you are expert tutors, but we can always be better. And for those who are newer to Twitter, here's a checklist. So remember, our advice is a simple message. So try to make it personal and let it add value. So an example is best tips I received at MacPFD so far are ... Best part of the So Me or Twitter workshop today at MacPFD are so-and-so. And we try to include a graphic. So it can be an emoji, a screenshot is a great idea, a selfie. Use our hashtag, please, hashtag MacPFD13, and tag us at Lena Duke and at Sharon Ball 8. So why don't we all take a few minutes to do that? And I'm going to try to share my screen as well while I go on to Twitter. And then what we'll do is we'll have a look and see how we're doing by looking up our hashtag. So just give me a moment to convert and you guys can start doing that.
And if you don't have a Twitter account yet, but came to find out how to do it, it's actually very easy. Just go to twitter.com and then log in. And you can set yourself up in like 10 seconds, well, 30 seconds or so. It doesn't take very long. Or if you want to practice, you can practice by using the chat box to tell us what you would tweet, and I'll tweet on your behalf.
Yes, thank you, Teresa. All right, let's see if I can share here. All right, so you can see that. So let's compose an interesting tweet. Enjoying, actually. I actually run into problems sometimes when I use at Mac for some reason. So I'm going to get out of that. Now, I love your screenshot there, Sri. So let me see if I can find something. I tried to take a screenshot earlier. I hope it's the right talk. Nope, that's mine. Do you think it would be bad if I actually just put Adlina? Isn't that awful? That's easier. So let's do that. Let's put Adlina. There we go. Crew.
For the purposes of the workshop, we won't blame you. You can always do the next one later.
That's right, I will. On Twitter. All right, here we go. So I'm going to
make sure you tag the people. Yeah, you can do that, or you can also click the tag people in the underneath the picture, and then that doesn't take up your words, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, that's right. You know what? I tend to do that a fair bit, actually. So that's a really good tip. I was told that by Lena as well.
Yeah.
So let's go to MacPFD13. Looking forward there. All right.
Awesome.
Awesome. So excited for MacPFD. Thank you, Sri. Hopefully you're still excited. Retweet.
And Sharon, you can also look at the latest, so you can see the most recent tweets composed, as opposed to the top. Now you're looking at the top ones.
Just at the top bar there, it says top, and then latest, and then people.
Oh, sorry. Yes, of course. Yeah, sorry. Latest is probably more helpful for us.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. Great. Thank you. At Generation K, we'll retweet that out. Thank you, Teresa. So grateful. So excited to have been pulling this online virtual conference. Fantastic. Live tweeting out the conference. I don't know how Teresa is able to moderate and live tweet out, but she is.
Well, I'm not live tweeting. Sri is, so I'm just thanking her.
Oh, Sri is. Oh, thank you. Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's great. Thanks, Lena. That's a good one. So let's go back and see if we can stop sharing for a minute. I'm just going to flip back to my slides.
Great for that tour. And so as you can see there in the last screen that she just had, you could actually see when people mention you as well. So
the notification.
Yeah, you'll be notified if someone mentions you, or if people kind of wanted to tag you in something, you'll show up in that section there.
And this is why we need to have Teresa co-present with us, because she's an expert. So thank you, Teresa. So just a few more thoughts that I wanted to share, and then really wanted to open it up to Q&A, especially when we can leverage people who are as amazing as this. There is a lot of conversation, and I've had conversations with clinicians and educators about, do I really need to be on Twitter? And I mean, obviously we think you do, but you know, it's an important question. Is this important for me professionally? And I think the second question, is it appropriate for me professionally? That's the second piece, right? And so I really liked this article from a couple of years ago where this author quotes a physician. If you think about what I tell patients in the exam room, if I could de-identify, to take those particulars away, and amplify that message, it would be foolish not to. And it's really gotten me thinking, and in conversations I've had with others, I just think how many times I'm talking to a student or a colleague or a patient, and I think, boy, I feel like I have some content expertise here, or I feel like I have a good idea, or sometimes I feel like I have an important question. I wish I could put it out a bit more than just this interaction. And that's really the amplification that this medium provides. And it really has gotten me thinking, and that's sort of the way I've thought about it, and that's the way I would think about encouraging everyone else to think about it too, that it is part of our professional profile. It's actually an essential part, I think, at this point of being an academic, a researcher, whether it comes to disseminating your information, or a clinician even. It's really that advocacy piece. All the stuff that we do on a one-to-one, could we do it in a different way? And is actually that part of our roles. In Canada, we call that our CamMeds roles. So Jennifer Gunter, I don't think you can escape without having a little conversation about Jennifer. And so she is a very, very well-known obstetrician gynecologist, rose to fame through social media, and really how she was able to harness platforms like Twitter to dispel medical myths. And that in particular was around women's health as a particular focus, and actually around Goop and taking on Gwyneth Paltrow. And so in doing that, she was asked about Twitter by this author, and she described Twitter like a giant cocktail party. And I absolutely love that explanation. I love that analogy, because to me, a cocktail party is when you're sort of thrown into a room with others, and there might be a loose association, either you all know the host or you're kind of generally interested in the same thing. But it's often a time where we engage with people whom we don't know very well. And it has that sort of feeling of being these extemporaneous, timely sort of chats on different things where we can flip between group to group, and we can kind of come and go and grab some appetizers. So in its own way, it can be a bit asynchronous and sort of like a community of practice. You're sort of on the border, you're coming in, you're coming out. And I think that that's a really good way of thinking about the power of Twitter again. So again, it's conversational. You can get into a chat, you can leave a chat, you meet new people. And some of those, just like in a cocktail party, some of those relationships that we make actually do extend past that initial conversation. So I think just a really good analogy by her. So a couple last points before we open it up to our round Q&A. So strengths of Twitter. I think all of us know that there's equitable access, that this is convenient, free, portable, asynchronous on our phone. This is a slide borrowed by Nadia, and I really loved this second bullet. So she talks about how you interact with the public, but it's not just about product placement. It's about building a relationship. And that is something that I know Lena and I have harped on a lot, but that's very important to the power of Twitter. To, again, it's called social media for a reason. It's relationship building. So be personal, be authentic, let your voice shine through. And when we're authentic, we actually do tend to form a voice, and that actually helps us develop our voice and actually increases our influence. And in terms of avoiding pitfalls, again, borrowed by Nadia, who experienced, I'm sure, many of these as she became president of the Ontario Medical Association during a difficult time. And so I lean on her expertise. And so she talks about being focused on your goal. And that's exactly goes back to Lena's slides, that it's very important to do that when we're building a brand. Question period doesn't equal answer period. I mean, how intelligent is that? So just because someone asks you a cockamamie question does not mean that you need to engage, right? When, however, there is an engagement that's needed, when perhaps someone's taking something you've said and you don't feel it's landed correctly or the information has been interpreted correctly, then the block and bridge technique is really helpful. So not at all, ... and restate, reframe. Actually, ... Use that opportunity to reframe your message. Or I'd like to highlight, or what's really important. So these techniques, even though they seem somewhat intuitive, it is really important not to get into that sort of mental space of quick reaction. Just take a moment, and again, we're in a professional space. So in terms of the third bullet point, I think of how we engage with our students or our patients, or in a professional email to our faculty director. You know, we have all learned through email to read twice and send once, and be familiar with institutional policy. So it's the same idea. Just be mindful of that. It's really not any different. It's really just the concept of that this is, consider it a professional space, even though it has that conversational tone as part of your professional brand. And so just be cognizant. And if you feel a little bit overwhelmed, you can always take a break, right? So important Twitter accounts. This was too diverse an audience for me to land on anything specific. So really, I have to make a plug for Waterloo Regional Campus because, of course, I'm part of the exec there, so that's my responsibility. I put a plug for Alien Faculty Incubator because they've been very good to me, and I enjoy being part of that program. I also put Teresa Chan because she's the guru. I put MacPFD, and on a personal note, women in medicine and both from a health equity and from a leadership lens is actually really important to me. So I hope you do follow us at Women OMA. And even though my Twitter handle could be optimized, it is on the bottom right there. So if you wish to follow me, please do that. And at this point, I just want to make sure, again, you tweet us and tag us and use our hashtag MacPFD13. I'm going to stop this share now and actually really open it up to some questions. Alina, I don't know if you've been following the chat. I do have a few little barbs here from my colleagues that I need to change to MD, and that it's quite easy. So I shall be doing that shortly as a takeaway from our Twitter talk.
Mm-hmm.
So does anyone have any questions, comments?
Actually, Sharon, in fact, I tweeted that if I could accomplish something at MacPFD13 is to have you switch your Twitter handle.
Thanks, Lena. Thanks, Lena. I will rate you highly. If you rate me highly, I will do that. I will do that.
All right. So we have about 5 minutes, and then we have a closing ceremony that we need to get to. I'll post the link for that shortly, but definitely I also take a moment to rate our speakers because they've been so awesome, and you can rate them right off of the website as well. But here's the link for the rating. That's the link.
There is a, thank you. There is a question for just looking at the Twitter app for iOS, and I don't see the tag people. Anyone have a tip for that?
I tweeted it to her. So
you did? Okay, perfect.
Yeah. You can take a look and see the thread for that. But basically, once you actually add a photo, it appears underneath. It doesn't say tag. It says who's in this photo, and you can tag people there.
I see a question. Is there a way to edit a tweet after you post it without fully deleting it? No. There's no way to edit a tweet. And you know what? If you've made a typo and you want to correct that, I say don't bother. It's Twitter. People expect other people to make typos. It's not really worth it. Don't get into the habit. It's like, oh, I forgot to put, a comma there. Don't worry about it. It's okay. It's Twitter. Now, if you've posted something that's not correct, I think it's important to at least, it's important to post the correction and delete the former tweet. Let's say you posted something that turned out to be incorrect. Do not get into the habit of deleting tweets. Don't be like Trump, Take responsibility and accountability for your own tweets. You posted something that's not correct. And if you just did it right away, you can delete it very quickly. But if it's like if something that you posted last week and it was probably viewed by people, because you can look at the impressions and see how many people or how many impressions it's got. You can post a correction, but don't get into the habit. You cannot edit a tweet. And I think if you could, Twitter would not be the same platform that it is today. That's the beauty of Twitter.
Sri has a question. So if you're tagged in someone else's tweet, what's the best way to find the original tweet? It's often you're caught in the middle of mentions. It's like buried in the middle and you have to try to find your way in. I don't know, Lena, do you have any suggestions?
It shows in your notifications, but another way is to actually search for your own Twitter handle on Twitter.
Mm-hmm. The other thing I do is I
search for yourself. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say the other thing I do is when I've been tagged in something, I click on the actual tweet and then it usually threads to whatever came before. So you can go and back and go back to the original tweet and see why you were tagged in it to begin with.
That's a great question. There's another great question. Does timing matter? Can you post about last week's residency conference a day later or a week later? That's a really good question because I get stuck on that a little bit. So thoughts about that? I would think that it's still important. I have to say it probably feels like we may have missed some momentum, but I think there's actually really value in that. So I'm wondering about comments actually from maybe Teresa from your lens, like specifically thinking about a conference.
Yeah, so I think that like what I would probably suggest is that you acknowledge that it happened last week and that you're still thinking about it. So sometimes you want to make sure you're taking some time to compose something to make sure it's accurate, fact check and things like that. So that's one thing that I would suggest. So for instance, if you guys wanted to tweet at MacPFD, tweet the hashtag MacPFD13 later and just reflect on some of the key takeaways that you had, that would be awesome because it keeps the conversation going. That's definitely something I would suggest. I do find that that's a great way. Some people are talented like Srija and are able to actually live tweet, and that's how they take notes during conferences. A lot of people do that during conferences, so that's something that you might want to consider. And I think that that's awesome. So I think there's another question as well. Wondering if you have resources that you could share on healthcare use of social media or stats. Sometimes I present to occupational therapists about using, or occupational therapy students using social media and would like to share some research. Yes, Kelly, you can reach out to me. If you would reach out to me on Twitter, actually, I will send you lots of stuff. This is a major area of my area of research, so I'm happy to share with you some of the stuff. We just wrapped up a really big scoping review with like 628 papers that we mapped to look at the landscape for social media teaching and learning scholarship. So definitely happy to share.
Mm-hmm. I see a question. How long is recommended for a Twitter handle? I mean, there's no really a limit, but don't make it too long because it takes away when someone is responding to you. You're limiting their character limit. If that makes any sense.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
Don't make it too long.
Yeah. I tried to go over the shortest that I could get when I got it in 2009. I actually didn't start using Twitter until much later. I started using it after I graduated. The story is that I asked my mentor, Jonathan Shervino, who's one of the assistant deans for education research here at Faculty Health Sciences, and I asked him, what do you do now that you're done residency to keep up to date? And he actually unironically looked at me like skeptically and said, Twitter. And I said, no, seriously, what do you use? And he said, Twitter. And I'm like, no, seriously, what do you use? Like 3 times, because I wouldn't believe him. And he convinced me that I should start using Twitter professionally. And so I that's what I did. I went and looked at what it is that we could use. And lo and behold, I fell down a giant rabbit hole, and I'm on the other side. I feel like Alice, and I've actually taken down the queen.
And the rest is history. There's another question about someone saying they do not see the tag people like function. It's not, when we say tag people, just include their Twitter handle in your tweet.
Mm-hmm. You can
it's
also
not like on Instagram where you have to tag people. No, it's just include them in the tweet.
Or you can add a photo and then tag them in the photo.
Oh yeah.
So
Yes.
that's the other way that people do it.
Yeah.
That's a really good question. Thoughts on including personal info / pics on Twitter? What is the balance between personal and professional? I think that's a phenomenal question. I actually think about that a fair bit. So people who follow me know that once in a while I'll post something about the kids. And my struggle is always, I mean, there's a consent issue with my son, so he doesn't typically make it into my tweets, but my daughter's ready to post. But it's an interesting question. Love to hear thoughts. I think from my point of view, I think that that's okay. But I think, again, we just have to be mindful of the fact that it's out there. I think for me, I feel like that actually makes me feel sometimes people are a bit accessible. But I mean, obviously, like everything, it's a bit of a balance, without a doubt. And I think that I do it often around some achievement piece. As my daughter's gotten older, she's 10 now, there are a lot more pictures of, her, kind of her head engaging with others. So like, kind of her hugging someone and me kind of lauding her on like a loss. And she's, let's say, part of a team. But having said that, I still think that there's a role, but I know that there's a whole school of thought that says it isn't. So I just want to open that up to everyone else. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. So Lena, maybe you can share, and then we got to go to closing ceremonies.
Sure. I think, the personal side makes you who you are. It's too much work to kind of separate I recommend bringing your whole self to Twitter, but you don't have to share, your kid's birthday party pics. You can pick and choose what you choose, but showing your personal side, your human side, makes you more human on Twitter and helps you better connect with people. So I'm all for bringing yourself whole in a wholesome way to Twitter.
Well, that's a great ending quote. So be authentic, be your whole self. That's great.